I'm Kerry McMahon, co-founder and managing director of KE Select. We are one of Australia's leading scientific recruitment agencies. We specialise in all areas of science, life sciences, biotech across the sector. I'm very proud to say that for the last 13 years we've been servicing the sector and the industry and really engaging with scientists across all disciplines. I'm here today to talk about professional branding and how important it is and why it matters, and hopefully give you guys some hints and tips and a bit of guidance in terms of putting something together that's strong and impactful and will help you throughout your career. The first thing I guess we want to talk about is personal branding. You know, what actually is it? Well, it's your reputation, really, at the end of the day. And why is it important? It's important in science. It's important in every industry, to be quite honest. Your personal reputation and your personal brand, regardless of industry or sector, is pivotal. It's actually the thing that will define you, what people will remember about you. But within science particularly, it is your area of passion, and there is a particular strategy that you have to put in place, especially if you're driving yourself towards a career in a particular area. So the first question naturally you need to know is quite simply, who are you? You know, who are you? What are your values? You know, what are you known for? What area do you specialize in? Do you have an actual professional narrative? We all know who we are personally, or, you know, from time to time we question that and we pull ourselves back in and we redefine. It's the same for your career. You need to be checking in on that and understanding who you are. What is my plan? And that does take a little bit of work. It's conscious. You have to have accountability. You have to track it, but you have to plan it and devise it. It's almost like your little personal business development plan. What will happen if you have a set plan and you have a bit of clarity and a guidance and a path in front of you? Well, it generates huge amounts of clarity, which then generates confidence in your delivery. When you're actually introducing yourself, who are you, what do you do? You've already got that organised in your head. You know exactly who you are. You can present that and put that forward to whoever you are in whatever capacity that you're in professionally. It does take hard work. It takes action. It takes a bit of reality. You have to know who you are. You have to check in on yourself regularly and ensure that you're building that plan and that narrative, changing it when things may change for you personally. Outcomes involved in this, you're looking at, having that plan just gives you a bit of a drive. So it allows you to really focus on that desired career success. So the plan is to basically have your brand in place, define it, find out who you are, present it, and ultimately drive yourself to where you want to go. Now, one of the biggest tools that we have, and everyone is, I'm very sure aware, is LinkedIn. Is there anyone here who doesn't have a LinkedIn? Oh, that's good. That's really good news. So personal brand on LinkedIn is where it all begins. And this is probably a chunky part of my presentation, and I'll get through this quite quickly, Linda. Your bio, your profile. We need to have it's a professional setting. It's an attempt to put yourself out there professionally. So you want people to recognise you for who you are and what you do and what you can bring to their table. Your profile picture is extremely important. It should be a professional picture. We don't want any, glass of wine or whatever it is. These things are all very fun, but it's not for LinkedIn. So generally speaking, quite a conservative photo is usually the way to go, and something that really does present a little bit of confidence. Your bio, again, having a look at what does that say about you? Who are you? It's really important to take the time and actually sit down and work that out. And that bio should represent what are you looking to achieve in your career? Where do you want to go? You should be highlighting your key skills and activities up there. The narrative, the content, the recommendations, if you've done something great, if you've worked on a great project with a professor or a teacher or a group, ask someone to give you a recommendation. Put yourself out there a little bit, get that on your LinkedIn profile. So that strategy will allow you to then build your whole LinkedIn profile, checking in with companies that align with your plan, again, your personal brand, your personal journey. That means identifying where do you want to work in the future? What industry do you want to be in? Do you have a top 10 companies that interest you, that you're driving towards, that you'd like to get to know, that you want to be in front of? If that's the case, get onto LinkedIn, start following them, start reading about them, educate yourself. And then you're in a position to share their articles, to share their news, to share that you're part of that particular scientific ecosystem, whether it be molecular, chemistry, whatever it may be, you know. Engagement on LinkedIn is key. So again, identifying, you know, your personal journey. Who should you be connecting with? Who are the hiring managers in the companies that you want to work with, potentially? Who are people who work in those companies that you could maybe meet for a coffee and ask them, you know, how did you get to where you are? And really present yourself to them too. So all about finding out who you are. Your personal brand is massively driven by your points of difference. As I said before, your values. What is your point of difference? What do you do that's different to the next person? So really want to find out what that is, put the effort in to find that, and ensure that you are, I guess, creating that narrative throughout LinkedIn and throughout your presentation of yourself. Hiring managers and recruiters, do they look at your profile? Absolutely they do. If you go for a job, if you put your application in, you bet your bottom dollar they're on there. So I think if you haven't got it up to date, I would really stress that we sit down maybe on Sunday afternoon for a minute and get it done. Consistency is key. So who are you again? Your personal brand across all platforms. If you go to an event, hi, who are you? What are you going to say? These are the things that you should really have prepared. And your personal activity is also strong in that regard too. One thing I have to just say, all of this is all very, you know, it's strategy, it's planning. There's a bit of, I guess, conscious delivery of who you are, but you have to remain genuine. You have to remain authentic within yourself and who you are. So your personal brand might change as you go through your journey because you might change or your dream might change, and that's okay. Just checking in with yourself, but ensuring that your new plan is just as great as your first plan. So always working on that. If you've got your plan, you will always have your confidence. I mentioned earlier your point of difference. Again, definitely leaning in on that, digging deep, finding out what that is. Build on that, work hard to identify what it is. If you can't find out, you have to do a little bit of self-journey, and that might mean you can do a bit of a psychoanalysis on yourself. You don't need to wait for an employer to put you through a psychometric test. You can do some of that yourself if you like. Get uncomfortable, you know, if you're sort of struggling to find out what that is, sometimes it's a bit difficult to take a real deep dive. I would recommend doing that and exploring yourself. A bit of self-reflection, and always be consistent with your branding. So yeah, thought leadership. So for you to be a strong ambassador for yourself, you have to be a thought leader in your particular space. So you want to be able to share articles, news. You know, you want to be able to tell someone an important and exciting event that's happened within your space. Educate yourself in what you're doing. Educate yourself on your area of expertise so that you can be that person to share that bit of insight and that bit of knowledge and that bit of education. Drive your own personal campaign through LinkedIn, through events that you attend. Actually map it out and be a bit proactive in terms of how you're putting yourself forward. You know, getting to events, as I mentioned before, sharing news, but ultimately being brave. You know, having that self-belief is really important, and working on that alongside building your personal brand, in my opinion, is really important. All I can say there is to sort of wrap this part up is that the biggest thing you can do is plan, and that's for anything that we do in our lives. I think when you plan and you have a plan, you do ultimately, you know, tend to get a better outcome. So it's no different here with your personal branding. So your planning leads to that strategy that I mentioned, and I think we all need to have a strategy, and if we don't have one, it's time to start building one. The strategy will bring you confidence when you're introducing yourself, when you're standing up and getting an opportunity to talk at an event, etc. And this ultimately, in my opinion, over the years will lead to confidence. So for us, you know, just quickly, I started my journey, you know, very early on, 20 plus years ago, let's just say. I was a microbiologist for all of about 6 months. Excuse me, guys. And eventually I wanted to get out there and I wanted to, pivoted hugely into business development, into people, working with people. And that took a lot of self-awareness, brand recognition. Who am I? What do I want to do? And I consciously have built that up over the years and put myself out there continuously. I'm here today with the absolute privilege of being part of such an amazing sector. I love the people that drive this sector. Glenda and her team here at TRI, LSQ, all the people that are involved in what we do. But it does take a lot of work and a lot of self-reflection and who you are and who you want to be. So my team, I'm very proud of the work that we've done to build ourselves to where we are now. We're here to help you guys, so we are in the area afterwards, and we'll be floating around. But if at any point you do want me to extend on this a little bit, or you want a bit more information, please feel free to check in. I'm always open to a conversation. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Hello everyone, fantastic to be here today. So I'm Denise Hodge, I'm the CEO and founder of JourneyTech. We're a commercialization services company, so we focus on accelerating technologies and research coming out of universities and translating that and actually providing it as a pathway to market and to industry. It's a very exciting role. I get to see a lot of innovations that no one has seen before, so very early in the development stage. It's a really great space to work in. Now, you're probably wondering what's with the toothbrushes, and it was really to remind me to talk about, through this 10 minutes that I've been given, thank you very much, it's all about choices. That's how I look at careers, and very much in my career, it's always been about choices. Is it the blue toothbrush? Is it the pink toothbrush? I spend a lot of time in the supermarket with my 9-year-old, choosing toothbrushes. And I feel like my career has been very similar. It's all about, should it be the pink toothbrush or should it be the blue toothbrush? So there's a little bit of a theme around choices through my talk. This is me, looking very excited and full of eagerness in 2003. This was just as I'd finished my PhD. And this was celebrating the finishing, and I still have that lab coat, and all of my supervisors and friends and colleagues signed it, and I still have that lab coat today. So really, again, ticking off a few goals. Yes, managed to finish high school, fantastic. Yes, got my degree. You can hear probably from my voice that I'm from the UK, so got that from the University of York. Yes, managed to get a PhD. As you can see, very excited. 3 long years, but very good ones. And then I went on to do a postdoc. So then came the question, what next? And I actually thought for this talk, I would put a little bit of a pathway together around what my pathway has been for throughout my career. And this is what I found, and it was quite eye-opening actually to myself as well. And I'm not going to spend ages and bore you with each of those individual positions that I went through, but there are some little points along the way that I will draw your attention to. One of those was here. So I did my PhD, I then did a bit of a science communication role, and then I had a jump. I moved from the UK to Australia. And yes, most of that was for backpacking, and I did go down the East Coast on a Greyhound bus, and it was very exciting. But it did take me to Australia, which I think is one of the great things about science, is that you can travel, and you can travel to different countries, and you have this transferable skill which goes across the globe. So I had the real excitement to do that, and I came to Australia, and I did a postdoc at IMB at University of Queensland, and loved every minute of it. The second transition point was between my postdoc and when I became a trainee attorney, and that was to become a patent attorney. And I again did that in Australia, and it was a big jump. So I went from wearing jeans and a t-shirt to wearing a suit jacket and formal suits, and it was a big jump for me, and it was a lot of writing that came with it. So that was a steep learning curve. The next big one, I would say, was when I moved from the patent attorney into a commercial landscape. So I joined the university, and I started to work on commercialisation of technologies. Again, everything what I call cradle to grave. It's taking new innovations, working with researchers to take their innovations out, partner with industry, and actually see it go into the marketplace. Another big point here is I jumped back to the UK. So again, with these sort of skills that I had around a patent attorney, commercialisation, I had a research background, I then could move back. So again, fantastic opportunities to move around globally. I went back to the UK, across to the University of Edinburgh, and that's where I was a business development manager. But it hadn't finished there. I then decided I would jump back again. So I came back to Australia, and I went to Melbourne, and I joined the government and worked as a COO. And again, looking at commercialisation. And my sort of story moves then on to multiple other universities and then finally forming my own company. So you can see here, it's been a really sort of interesting pathway through different roles, different countries. But one thing I wanted to talk about here was transferable skills. And that's something that I've taken along each of my different positions. So some of those transferable skills which have helped along the way are things like people skills. Managing teams, talking to people, leading with empathy. Writing. It has been a key thing for me to be able to write and write well. I got a little bit of that as a researcher, but really it came when I was training to be a patent attorney. Attention to detail. That's been throughout all of my jobs, so real clear attention to detail. Making a difference. I had a real passion, I still do. I want to make a difference. It doesn't have to be me. I can help someone else make a difference, but I want to get there. Communication, like we're doing now, really important to be able to communicate well, whether it's through written or whether it's PowerPoint and presenting. Innovation. Innovation is really important to all of these roles. That's internally, so intrapreneurship, entrepreneurship, all of the above. Learning. Never stop learning throughout everything. Never feel like you know everything, like my 14-year-old son does. It's not the case. So always keep learning. And analytical skills. So one of the biggest things that I've brought along with my scientific background is the way I can analyse things. So I feel like that skill was taught to me throughout my PhD and my degree, and I did a biology degree. I can actually look analytically at all of the different things around business, tech transfer. It's just been a really great skill to have. How am I doing with time? Yeah. Thank you. Foundations of science. So here I wanted to talk about if you have a foundation of science and intellectual property, which can be gained through if you're doing, if you look to do an MBA, for example, you have interest in that, or you're looking to do, maybe some IP courses. If you have that type of background, there are a number of different careers you can take and different pathways. And this is what I'm talking about, where you have choices. So you could become a knowledge tech transfer professional with an IP background and with some deep science, a patent attorney, both of those would apply, a patent examiner, work at IP Australia in Canberra. You can be an IP analyst or patent searcher, an IP lawyer. That's another one. A lot of these require other qualifications, but the foundation is still there. An IP manager, and that can be in-house in industry. It can be within universities. It can be within a small SME or a startup. An IP consultant, so you can be someone like me who sits in your own company or a larger firm and provides consulting. And I always like to put teacher, because it is a really great thing to do, and there's not enough of them. So teacher is another really good option there. And then I also wanted to look about this sort of area from science and business. So again, knowledge tech transfer professional is up there, again, within universities, within industry. A commercialisation manager, which is where I started, and I did that in universities. It can be very broad or it can be quite narrow, depending on what organisation you're in. Startup founder. There seems to be a lot of startup founders happening. It's an exciting, risky, invigorating option, but it's out there, and there's a lot more pathways where you can do that. Investment associate, or even an investor. So there's angel investors and VCs, an entrepreneur. There's a lot of those starting to pop up as well. Or you can go into the C-suite. There's a COO or a CSO or a CEO in a small company, in a startup, in a larger organisation. There's pathways to work towards that. And again, I'm going to put the teacher on there because we really need them. So there's a teacher, and it's a really good fallback position with lots of opportunities. but I do hear that apparently the holidays are not as good as we all think. What's to love or hate? So I wanted to just talk about my role and things that I love, but not everyone will. And this again is about choices. So throughout my whole journey, I've always had a choice. You never don't have a choice. And it's a little bit like you come and there's a fork in the road and you decide, am I going to go this way or this way? And then you stick with it, off you go, and it takes you in lots of different directions. The majority of the roles that I've had have not been ones that I've chosen and put an application in for. They've been ones where either someone has approached me or there's been a conversation. Next thing you know, we're moving towards starting a different role in a different organisation. And that's been always through my network, so important networks. So what I like is amazing innovations, often first to hear, very exciting, get a buzz out of that. Working with smart and passionate people, fantastic. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Solving problems, I really enjoy solving problems. Not everyone does, so that might be a hate. Strategic thinking and planning, I love planning. I like making lists, and that's something that I do a lot of. So again, a love or a hate. Traveling, I travel a lot. I like going traveling globally as well. Networking, super important. Often get the opportunity to do it. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. Depends on the crowd. Deep analytical and written tasks. I do love those. I like really going deep down into the detail and spending time in a quiet room on my own, and maybe that's my scientific background training. Love it. Big picture thinking, I also like that. Working with lots of people, being creative, getting a whiteboard out, and that's also what I do in my job. Teaching and presenting, I really enjoy as well, and like having the back and forwards. That's it. So thank you so much for listening.
My name is Daniel. Usually if I'm in trouble, most people call me Dan. I work for Evolve Scientific as their business development manager in Queensland. So I've worked with a number of businesses over the last 15 years, as Glenda mentioned, specifically in and around different sales components. These days I look after the business relationships that Evolve Scientific has with different organisations such as Try. And my real aim is to try find businesses that really need to have the right talent and help them to find that talent. So this is what these days are all about, and I think piggybacking off some of the comments from the previous speakers, it's really about connecting with people, setting up goals, and really understanding why you're doing this. So without further ado, we're going to touch on engagement. So engagement with intent. So why are we going out and seeking opportunities, seeking people and seeking businesses? And we're going to dig deep into this today. So what is engagement with intent? So engagement with intent refers to taking meaningful action to engage with people, organisations, businesses, opportunities, or educational institutions that align with your goals or needs. Whenever you're looking to engage, whether it's in a conference like we're having today, a symposium, an exhibition, educational format, fellowships, interviews, we need to understand the intent of this engagement and clearly define the goals that we have. We need to make sure that that engagement is aligning with those goals to ensure that we're going to get to where we're trying to go. So with that, the question comes, are you engaging with your career path or just going through the motions? Because I'm sure we've sometimes gone to an event or been involved with some research or something, and you're thinking, I'm not really sure why I'm here. And it's probably not the right place for you to be if that's what you're thinking. So it's really, really important to understand your goals. And these goals will change depending on where you are within your career path. Most of us here today, early on in your career path, you're entering the workforce, finishing your degrees. Your goals are going to be very different to someone who is, further along in their career. They're working as a CSO, they're trying to get funding, they're trying to develop new products. So depending on that point of your career, your goals should align with what engagements you're going to take on. So it works a little bit like a funnel, as you can see up the top there. So you can have many short-term goals. This might be perfecting particular techniques, gaining training in particular areas. You may have a few medium-term goals, which could be things like promotions or working on larger projects, secondments, for instance. And then you're going to have long-term goals. This could be your dream job or, finally getting that product out to market. And the way that you can shape your engagements will really be around where you're at with these goals and what you want to achieve. So, how do we engage with intent? So, as mentioned, set clear goals. If your goals aren't clear, well, your engagement's probably not going to be very clear either. So if your short-term goal is to learn PCR techniques, for instance, make sure you're going to the classes where you're going to learn those. If your long-term goal is to, get a job in pharmaceuticals or biotech, make sure that you're still going to those classes because those little goals will align with what that long-term goal is. Be selective with your opportunities. We are very lucky these days. There's a plethora of options for where we can engage. We can engage in places like online, such as LinkedIn and webinars. We can engage in conferences and symposiums. There's so much out there, but if we're spending our time engaging with things that don't align with those goals, you're never eventuating in meeting those goals. So make sure you're selective with your time because it is the most valuable thing. You can't get that back. We need to reflect as well. If you're getting to a point where you're, engaging with all these different industries, people, networking events, but you're not really getting the skills or the information that really align with where you're trying to get, well, we need to reflect and look at ourselves and try to align where we're going to make sure that we're engaging really, really well with what's coming up. And we need to seek feedback. There's plenty of people that are in our lives, both professionally and personally, that we can do this with. There's lecturers, there's mentors, there's business associates, there's other peers. We can use these tools to have those opportunities of, hey, how am I going? Where can I improve? What areas are my blind sides? And you can use that to focus on what you want to do next so you can become that better version of yourself and engage in the right way. So, how goals drive where and when we engage. Looks like that's gone a little bit askew, but anyway. So, there is many different places that we can engage. So we can engage in early career with training and education, internships, fellowships, networking opportunities. In higher education, for if we're in our medium-term part of our career, so conferences like this or larger ones where we're actually with business professionals. We can look at mentorships, finding people that are leaders in their field and asking what they did. People such as Denise and Kerry that are here. These are great opportunities that people like ourselves can learn from. And when we're in later in our career, these are going to be very, very different. We might be looking for government grants, engaging with consultants that can help us for that. But the idea is we're going to structure these engagements to really make sure that it's going to align. So you can see a little list down there at the bottom with some different areas in which people commonly engage: universities, webinars, recruitment agencies, people like ourselves and like Kerry, KE Select, Hughes, Evolve Scientific, LinkedIn as well is a really, really great one, as mentioned by the previous speakers. So what's really important as well is understanding not only how we engage, but why we engage. Many people might know what you do, they may even know how you do it, but they don't know why you do it. And it's really important that we understand and can dig deeper to understand why we are doing something and how we can actually portray that. So an example of this, for instance, if you're developing in biotech, there's a why statement and a what statement. A what statement may be, I want to be the best in my field in cardiovascular implant development. Sounds great, right? But that's not really engaging and going to elicit a response from the people that you're speaking to. If you were to phrase it a little bit more like, I believe by constantly developing my knowledge and skills and applying them to solve problem X, I can contribute to reducing patient side effects and increase patient longevity. For me, the ability to know I'm improving the quality of life and life expectancy motivates me to grow and develop myself from day to day. This digs deeper to the reason why you're actually in this career path. the reason why you're engaging with the people you are to gain education, networks, and develop your career path. And if you can utilise this in the way that you're setting your goals and the way you're articulating your goals with who you're engaging with, you're going to be able to get much better outcomes. So a real life example of how I've seen engagement with intent work recently. As I said, we work in recruitment, we work across a number of different fields within science. We were working on a research and development role for a client here in Brisbane, and they were looking for 2 roles, so a technician and a technologist. I actually reached out to the Australian Institute of Food Science and Technology, their chair here in Queensland, to see if there was any recommendations of people that they may have. I was passed along one fantastic candidate. From that candidate actually interviewed very, very well and secured that role. That candidate hadn't actually applied to the role, but because she was actively engaging in the APHIS community, she was going to conferences like this, webinars, networking events, and was active, that person was passed on to me. And this works in 2 ways. I also engaged with APHIS as well. So depending on where you are in your career, you can utilise these engagements in different ways. There are plenty of other organisations such as Tribe with what they do with their careers days and other events. Life Sciences Queensland, if you're part of that, make sure you're engaging with those people because they are invaluable resources that are at your disposal. So in conclusion, the main things that I want you guys to take away today is develop your goals. Have clear goals and understand that they may change throughout times depending on where you are with your career. This was touched on by our previous speakers, and it's a very strong theme you're probably going to see here today. Guide your engagements that intentionally align with your goals and your career path. Reflect on what's working and also what's not, because that's going to really help you to see where you need to improve and become a more complete picture. Dig deep to understand your why and ensure that this is conveyed during your engagements. You need to set yourself apart. There's a lot of people that have a lot of very similar skills, but if you're able to show them why you really are engaged and want to be here and want to grow, it's going to come through. Embrace opportunities that can come from different types of engagement. Obviously, education, networking, every one of these things has a different outcome. And engaging intentionally isn't about what's in it for you. It's also about what you can provide others. If you are there engaging and understanding that, hey, my goal is actually to help the person next to me, help the businesses that I'm working on, rather than, hey, I just want to get this next promotion, you'll see a much better outcome with your engagements. Thank you.
I've got some slides here. I think it's obligatory to go over my career path and try and show some pictures and put in words what I've done and how I've gotten here, just to give the hope that it inspires you or gives you some ideas around the biomedical field. I will then sort of focus in about some of the evolving options that are available in and around southeast Queensland, and then some of the impact of the latest advances hitting our field. So I think most people heading into their career or looking back at their career would all agree that it's largely unplanned. You do go between different opportunities, and I think being open to opportunities is a key takeaway from today. I mean, I can summarise my career in saying that I've worked in recombinant proteins and in the development and the manufacturing of processes supporting those. I've flipped between academia and industry. I did start out as a student and having lively days lying on the grass. But through the summers, I took the opportunity to do internships. So I was at TUI's and worked down at CSL. One was drinking beer and tasting and analysing beer, which was probably more fun. The other one was working with a chromatography system and working on separation of plasma proteins. But they all contributed. They all gave me good insights and good connections. And in real estate, it's location, location, location. I think in career path, it's connection. It is about meeting some key people and peoples. In my case, it's been Professor Peter Gray, who was a professor of the biotech degree, and he had, through his connections, one graduate of the class each year got to go over to the US and work at Merck. So I was over there for 5 years at West Point, Pennsylvania. This was a large site. Oops. So we were in the building 17, so it was about a $700 million building in today's terms. So it was a manufacturing and process development building all in one. And in hindsight, I was just going with the blows, but it was fantastic because it just exposed me to good manufacturing practices involved. You saw the latest and greatest equipment. It was making material that was going into clinical trials. You were then handing off to manufacturing, and basically they just kept throwing a lot of responsibility at you. And so got to work with large equipment. We just started to. There was a lot of stainless steel. I was also working on the lab bench with a lot of small 2-liter stainless glass bioreactors, but also moving into the pilot plant. But around about that time, we also started to really embrace single use. And so what was lovely at the time was, if this would have been the expansion bioreactor, this is a 300-liter, but think of that as a 30-liter, you could have all of that, or you could just have that. So there's a lot of reason why we moved to single use. It really simplifies things. And this was a site of sort of 17,000, but I was involved in a team of maybe, of about 250 in the development team. Coming back to Australia, I sort of switched to academia, I guess. I'm working at the University of Queensland. Professor Peter Gray was starting up the institute, and as soon as he heard that I had this sort of experience from industry, we said, oh, come on, we're setting up. So I got to set up what is a sort of a small service facility up to sort of 50-litre scale of running bioreactors and making recombinant proteins and purifying them, working with a team, and it's a smaller team, but hands-on and doing more of the development and the cell line development, and working with earlier stage customers. But being open to opportunity. Around about that time, there was a bunch of money coming together from local government and federal government to build a facility. It's part of this footprint. It's the Pantheon facility by Thermo Fisher right behind us. So I got involved with the design and the build of that facility, and then transitioned really from being a sort of an individual contributor to being more of a manager role. And so that was a distinct change sort of in my career, but a lovely change. And I think Dan was just sort of saying it's not about what's in for your career. You start to realise that it's about how you can lift everyone up and bring everyone along for the role. But lovely to work there. I had the opportunity then to go back over to the US, do another 4 years over there, working in a manufacturing facility. Times changed. We're now using small little multi-bioreactor, plastic bioreactors. But a lot of what we're doing in the development, and this is still chromatography systems and a 3-centimeter column, and you're just scaling up, and you're going to a 60-centimeter column or an 80-centimeter column, but it's the same equipment, just scaled in size. So a lot of my career has really been working on how to scale up processes and move them to manufacturing. And so coming back, just before 2020 and COVID, which was kind of fortuitous, ended up in Brisbane again, this time working for a company called Therapeutic Innovation Australia. I'm a director for strategic development. And basically, TIA takes funds from the Department of Education and puts it into research infrastructure to help early stage researchers get access to the expertise and equipment they don't have. And we try and focus that around these sort of 4 pillar modalities of cell and gene, RNA products, biologics, and small molecules. So it's a smaller team of around about 6 people, but it provides funding to the National Biologics Facility. I'm also a director there, working again back where I was back previously, and our whole reason for being is to really try and help researchers go from a great idea in the lab, and then how do you sort of strategically and methodically bring that through clinical design and preclinical and get to the GMP level where you start making that first batch to go into humans and then hand off to CDMOs, which Kim is about to talk about after this. So that's, and so now I do a bit of both and a bit of sort of consulting. So I think it's, embrace the fact that your career will move around, and it really is the journey and just picking up skills as you go along. I think that's that. I want to then sort of switch gears. So biomedical opportunities in southeast Queensland. Now, the problem with trying to put this onto one slide is obviously I leave things out, so I hope people don't feel bad. But from the point of view of biomed, the work that we do, there is a lot of opportunities within universities. So these can be service-based facilities like the National Biologics Facility I was just talking about. Universities are always putting out spin-out companies, small researchers who have gotten together some funding and they want to try and take it to the proof of concept or the next stage. So they're always looking for sort of biotech skills, working in clinical trial sites, tech transfer offices, UniQuest. These research groups always are getting funding for CRCs or in the Smart CRC, there's a $280 million cell therapy large project that just got up. And then from a spin-out point of view, Vice Bio is doing the molecular clamp vaccine over at UQ, and Fenza is based here at Tri, working with spider proteins, taking those into clinical trials. Cytef is T-cell or CAR T-cells at QIMR, and Favero also over there at QIMR. There's roles within medical research institutes, so MARTA, QIMR, Tri, and also working in Queensland Health at Metro South and North. And then precinct. So there's a lot going on. So we're in the Boggo Road precinct, Hurston's across the river, this knowledge corridor, and then extending down to Gold Coast. So with the universities in Griffith, there's a lot of activity happening down there. One sort of quick plug is just to say there will be roles and there will be opportunities with something that's happening right here at Tri. And so this is PM1, the UQ Bioproduction Hub. So this is about taking 3 existing service facilities within the University of Queensland, BASE doing mRNA, PEF doing expression of protein, but from yeast and microbial and insect, and the National Biologics Facility doing mammalian-based proteins, and then bringing those together, co-locating them here to build through sort of put in place a pilot scale manufacturing up to around 50 litres across these different modalities. And it's really about putting those skill sets together that we know works well with MBF, but applying it across mRNA and other systems. So this is something that this is the sort of thing that's cooking up in Queensland and happening. So you just got to have an ear to the ground. And then from an industry point of view, from a contract manufacturing organisation, so I left the country and went to the US to get my experience. I think a fantastic thing that's happening now is there is industry happening here in Australia, in Queensland, in terms of doing mammalian cell expression-based CDMO, with Thermo Fisher and Patheon. TM at Tri, Glenda just mentioned, so that will be a GMP compliant facility doing operations. There's QGen doing cell therapies. Southern RNA setting up mRNA at 8 Mile Plains and down on the Gold Coast. There are private companies, private biotech companies or listed companies. We all know Vaxxus, Sanofi with the Translational Science Hub, Servitus, who are doing microbial or microbiome, and so on. There's a lot of different things. There's suppliers from the people who are distributing today to the people who make the equipment that we use in our biotech labs. They have sales, but they also have technical roles and people, how you can help groups with service roles to try and drive things forward. So there's a lot of opportunities, and then it continues on into labs that support sort of the biotech area. And medtech, I'm not an expert, but there's, again, a lot of different options in and around with smaller companies. Some of these are in stealth, but a lot of them are doing really great things around with regards to sort of expanded opportunities. And final sort of slide is really just to talk about, well, that's great, Ben, that's what you did 20 years ago, but it is a different scene right now. And in some ways, AI and some of the points I'm going to talk to on this slide, they are game changers, but they are also just tools, and they're tools that are going to help us expand. And I think what we really see with AI and machine learning is it's just, it's driving it's moving things much faster. And so on the early stage, drug discovery, access to really large data sets, sort of multiplexing of biomarker discovery, and how we can sort of really drive diagnostics to get advanced understandings of disease states. So how we sort of fill the pipeline, as it were, that's really going a lot faster. And that explosion of data also comes across into how we do the manufacturing side. And so one thing that is also different, and where I started off and done a lot of large molecule biomanufacturing, a lot of the people that I worked with originally back at Merck, they've all moved into sort of cell therapies. And now in my role with TIA, I see a lot of people working with mRNA. So there are newer approaches and modalities to try and drive improvements to human health. And so precision medicine is another one, just our explosion of knowledge and how we can drive, personalized treatments to sort of single people or a single family in a genetic tree. It also changes the fact of you maybe don't want a 2,000 litre bioreactor to make that drug substance. You might actually need a small hollow fibre filter, and you might not need it in the manufacturing facility here in Brisbane. You might actually need it for the patient who's up in Townsville or in Birdsville. So just trying to think about where things go. I think the future is we're going to have to try and work out how to do things faster, smaller, and more mobile. And then another thing that really sort of is unlocking things, and you'll see a lot of, with Queensland government initiatives, PsiQuantum building out at the airport, $1 billion quantum computer. So this is another one that is just enabling AI and big data. So what does this all mean? I think it's, in my mind, just we will continue to see roles change and how we use these tools. I don't think it specifically is driving away the number of jobs, but it is interesting to sort of keep these in mind and just be aware that the career and the roles that I might have taken or others might have taken, there will be different opportunities and different sort of career paths based on our better understanding and the better challenges being thrown at us about how we translate biotech. So, thank you.
Okay, so really wanted today to talk about, I get many questions at these events over the last few years to go, what's it take to move to industry? And the more I talk to people, sometimes it's the wrong question to be asking. The question that you need to address is, what do I want? And you've heard that again and again today. And is a move to industry actually what's going to meet those goals that I'm setting for myself? So put it in perspective, and Ben showed some great photos already, but Patheon are a large-scale contract manufacturing and development organisation here in Brisbane. We're just manufacturing. What that means is we make liquid drugs, could be anti-cancer, anti-rheumatoid arthritis, could be any other protein-based biotherapeutic for a client. We're not making any products for ourselves, so we're a service-driven organisation making products that save lives. And it's always with our clients' patients at the end of the medicine that we're making that we put our focus on. Now, when I was a young person in high school, I wanted to cure cancer. Now, I thought I was going to achieve that by finding a cure to cancer, because if you consider my age, that was thought to be achievable within a lifetime back then in the 80s. I cure cancer today, but I do it through our clients and the medicines that they make. So that's my goal, and I feel I have achieved it. So Thermo Fisher, who's worked with Thermo Fisher pipettes or plasticware, Erlenmeyer flasks, something in the lab, equipment, we do a lot of stuff. However, I'm part of just that service part of the industry labelled under Patheon. So, should you consider a role in industry? This is my ad hoc advice. There's differences, I'll talk a bit more in the next slide, but don't think one or the other is less stressful, it's just a different kind of stress. My biggest challenge when I moved from academia to industry is learning to fail fast. You need to get used to dropping a project without finishing it. So attention to detail is critical. Moderate OCD is an asset, I would say. But industry really follows the 80-20 rule. Getting 80% of the way is good enough. If the product is sellable, that's good. Go, move forward, next stage. And I wanted to make it better. I wanted to make it perfect, but we weren't being paid to make it great or perfect. We were being made to make products good enough to sell. If we got it past that first stage gate, you could then put a little bit more time and refine that product and potentially make it better as you went along. That was my biggest learning. So if you're OCD tendencies and you really love to understand the finite perfection and true root cause of the science, industry may not be for you. But I knew that my self-motivations, I wanted to make the world better, I wanted to cure cancer. I cure cancer now, but through others. And that, for me, is enough. And there's no I in the word team. So, and we've already heard that today, thank you to Evolve. You achieve no glory in isolation in industry. There is no reward for individual contributions. Only by you raising the whole team together are you successful. And the R&D is very, very small in industry. And those jobs are fairly rare, but it seems to be the job most people are interested in. For example, as I said, next door, we don't even have R&D. We are manufacturing. But in my previous roles, I've worked in R&D, but the R was tiny and the D was huge. And my last piece of advice, get your CV industry ready. Your academic CV will not get you an industry job. And you're hearing that from someone who failed the first 32 tries of getting an industry interview. And I finally realised maybe my CV wasn't up to scratch. Kind of redid this. This is, by the way, mostly pre-Google, so I couldn't Google industry CV. And finally someone took a chance on me and I made it. All right, so as I mentioned before, R&D and industry, they're just different, and choose what fits your strengths. So in industry, your research development could be across multiple products. It's usually applied science to get a sellable product. So those goals are aligned to what the market requires, and it will go through stage gating. If you're going to fail fast, that saves a lot of money, and then that money gets invested in the next product, move on. We've already talked about the 80-20 rule, be prepared to let go. And industry often takes a novel research and applies it to a new industry paradigm. I was having a conversation yesterday with someone to say, actually, 2 commercial products that we've made next door, I first worked on in manufacturing in 2001. I've seen it have 5 owners before it's with its current owner, and each time that product, really great products, failed a clinical trial. So that company folds, sells it on, new company picks it up and tries it with a different application, and so it goes on. It's found its home in a cell therapy where it's actually used to sequester and enrich cell populations, which are then administered back to the patient. as I've already mentioned, there's no I in team. Interdepartmental and with an intra-departmental collaboration is expected and is rewarded. Time pressures impact the whole team, not just you, and the projects can be multi-billion. So if everyone's got to pull in and dig deep, you're all staying late. You're all working extra for the next few weeks to get it over the line. It can be a challenge at times in a high-pressure, volatile environment to achieve work-life balance, so you really want to dig deep into that resilience. And strong organisation skills are imperative, but advancement of your career is not dependent on time. You can have very rapid career advancement to senior management positions. It is based on your performance, not on the amount of time you've been in role. And you are paid for performance, but no payment is guaranteed. So there are years in my history where I've worked for companies and there was no bonus, there was no pay rise that year because the company didn't have the money to do it because we weren't returning on our shareholder prices. And permanent positions are readily available, but there is high competition. For one of our graduate roles we had recently, we had up to 400 applicants. So there are a lot more roles out there, and I'm really passionate and delighted about it because I left Australia for 19 and a half years because there weren't roles in Australia. So absolutely delighted to come back. Why would you choose academia? Well, maybe you want to stay researching a single topic. Maybe you love that basic research, finding out why, and getting to that true understanding and knowledge. Your goals are project-based, and hey, you can follow a pathway. Something really interesting came out of your research. You can go down a pathway and explore that more. If you're in industry, you're on that path, or you cut it and you move on. And novel research really helps fuel what those future directions in industry may be. You may be rewarded for being an individual contributor, and self-glory is possible. So if you know that being recognised as the most amazing researcher in the world is one of your intrinsic motivators, please don't move to industry. You really will not be happy. And I say that because there are some amazing academics out there, and they're the best they could be. One of my best friends is an academic up at JCU in Cairns, and man, by the time she moved to JCU, she had 50 Nature papers to her name. I am not worthy of her amazing abilities to do this amazing research, of which some are now in spin-offs. So time pressures generally impact you or a small team of people, generally around, oh my God, that grant, I've only got 3 weeks left, I've got to get it done, help, right, but I have all this other stuff to do. And it's really stressful still. But the projects in academia are generally smaller scale. It'll be great when R&D is, if we say, financed equally across all of Australia. And depending on the grant, because I know when it's grant time, it certainly doesn't feel it, but sometimes you have that space to be innovative and creative and generally less pressured to go look at some interesting science, as long as you're still fulfilling the roles of that grant. Strong organisational skills are an asset wherever you go, so incredibly important in both industries. And on the downside in academia, the average primary grant holder is a lot older than most of you in this room, but it does provide steady, if sometimes slow, career progression and advancement prospects. However, you are a government employee, you are guaranteed a pay increase annually, and what I would say is if you're an ECMR and you are considering childbearing, having children in the next few years, look carefully, because you'll get much better support and prospects in an academic role than you necessarily will with the statutory, 6 weeks paid leave in a typical industry role. And academia will give you 6 months paid leave. So that is something for consideration if you are thinking about becoming a parent. However, on the downside, there aren't many tenured roles, and it is tough to continually feel like you are looking to, justify your existence on a year-by-year basis. When we look at the skills, though, there are some that are really important across either, and some play a bigger role in some or the other. So there are two that kind of span, and they are data analytics, we've heard that today, and problem-solving skills. Probably more important, if you're staying in academia, will be that ability to think outside the box, be innovative and creative. That is rewarded because you come up with some amazing new ideas. There is a lot of this publish or perish, and really getting your publications into highly regarded peer-reviewed journals, and a focus on getting those grants approved, which, especially when you're an ECMR, without the sponsorship of a more senior accredited grant holder, can be very challenging. So you are and can be rewarded as an individual contributor and get that moment of glory and make some amazing science happen. And as I said, you are rewarded for innovation and creativity. Now, while you can be rewarded in industry for that as well, it is generally in a context of delivering something. Specifically in industry, the ability to network to get what you need to move forward and really help support is critical. But I think we've heard today perhaps that's in the wrong box, and actually it's equally important wherever you're going. Very strategically driven projects are the focus of industry, and then always having a continuous improvement mindset. How can I do it better, faster, and for less money? Because that means profit back in the shareholder's pocket. So in my role as the boss next door, I am held accountable to a budget that I must deliver on. And to be very frank, if I don't deliver on it 3 years in a row, I'm gone. And therefore the KPI focus, so key performance indicators, I must meet my targets. I must, or I lose my job. That's as far as it is. And at my job, there is no discretionary process. It's just, yeah, it's not working. You're out.
There's no performance management.
There's no performance management, at this level anyway. But everything I do is about with the patient in mind. So whatever I'm delivering for one of our clients, it's about the patient they're serving. And I love that aspect of my role. Resilience is so key in industry because it is heartbreaking when a client fails its phase 3 trial. And we had this year, an Australian client, I thought they were going to make it. I thought their product was amazing. They had sunk $780 million into that product in the last 2 years, and it failed its critical phase 3 trial, and they're gone, folded, nada. So it's really heartbreaking when you think of the patients at the end of it, that perhaps the way the clinical protocol was written caused it to fail, as opposed to, maybe they set too stringent a criteria. It could have still added a lot of value. So looking forward to that product being picked up and used somewhere else. And as I've mentioned, it can be quite intense. Now, things that work across both: team player, collaboration, accountability, own yourself, own your deliverables, deliver and say what you do and do what you say. Set a positive culture. A rising tide rises all boats and makes everyone around you successful. So if I think about my brand, I'm at a stage in my career where it's about actually nurturing the ecosystem, not just a job that I do next door, but a huge part of my networking is around supporting that next generation. And then communication, people leadership, if you want to be successful in either, they're good human management skills are great to have. And wherever you work, you must work with integrity. Thank you.
Well, I'm Vanessa. I used to be an academic researcher here. And 2 years ago, I moved to the industry and I became a medical science liaison with MSD, which is also known as Merck in the US. For those of you who don't know me, I'm from a little island in the Caribbean. I'm French. I'm sure you've picked up the accent by now. And I've moved from a little island good by sea to another island good by sea via France. I did my PhD in Paris at the Institute Kerry, and then I moved to Australia. Yes, I did a little bit of travel. I joined the lab of Nick Haywood at QIMR, and I was doing any kind of genomics, RNA, DNA, methylation, you name it, on melanoma. Then I moved to here, to this beautiful building, where I joined the team of Pam Pollock, and I was developing different types of mice models in her endometrial cancer projects. During that position, I started to collaborate with lots of different types of gynae oncologists, pathologists, medical oncologists at the Mater mainly, but across Australia. And I joined the Australia-New Zealand gynae oncology group. Then I moved to Andrew Barber's lab here at QQ, and I had several projects focusing on biomarkers in esophageal adenocarcinoma, melanoma, and pancreatic cancer. And I was also involved in the biobanking activities of the lab. During this position, I was mainly collaborating with different types of surgeons and medoncs, and I also joined the Australian gastrointestinal trial groups. So if I just stop here, I've just summarized the 8 pages of my CV in just one slide. I've removed all the papers, the grants, and everything that everyone is focusing on right now. And I only emphasized the points where I started collaborating with the clinicians, and that's what was important on my CV when I applied for my current position. So I got asked 3 questions. Why did I move to industry? Well, I'm sure most of you have seen that paper that came out in Nature last year in October. Turns out I was part of the stats. I was right in the right age. And I was sitting on a pile of data that I couldn't analyze or publish because I was focusing on writing grants. I think you mentioned that, going back to why I started cancer research. Yes, I wanted to have a direct impact on the patient, and I felt like I was losing myself. I was also looking for clearer career path. And also, that's not a little detail, my kids were older, so I could do it. In academia, yes, we are focusing on research, our own projects. We are teaching, we are publishing. In industry, it's more about, well, in my MSL position, it's more about building relationship, scientific communication, supporting the clinical trial development. In academia, it's all about contributing to this big pool of knowledge, when in industry, again, in my MSL position with the medical affairs, we are more centered about the patients. In every meeting room in the company that I am in, there is a red chair, which is representing the patient, reminding everyone why we are doing what we're doing on an everyday basis. They do overlap, so there is the cross-functional collaborations, the communications, and the analysis. So for those of you who don't know what a medical science liaison role is, I try to summarize the whole thing. If I start by the top, healthcare professional interaction, I do interact directly with clinicians, with researchers, researchers, mainly when they want to have access to some data or grants. I spend my time getting into all the deep outputs from any kind of conferences. Like 2 weeks ago was ESMO Breast. I'm still digesting all this data, and this weekend is ASCO, which means that I will have to focus on all those outputs because that's the material that I am discussing with most of the people that I exchange with. I organize lots of workshops and seminars within those conferences, but I also organize standalone medical events all along the year. I get involved with my colleagues from the clinical trials department within my company, which means that I get to explain most of the science behind the new clinical trials that they are opening. And so across all this type of interaction with the clinicians, I bring back insights that I share with my colleagues from the regulatory affairs department and the market access, because those insights are going to have an impact on the study registration to the TGA or even for the PBS listing. I also get involved to train my colleagues from marketing and sales when those studies get registered. And of course, everything has to be compliant in terms of local and international laws and ethics. There was the question about the differences between the academia and the industry. So I think most of these points have been developed. In academia, it's more hierarchical, and it's all about the individual achievements, when in industry, it's more about the teamwork and the collaboration. It's a very fast work pace. Like I said, I have to be on top of any kind of new data coming out of conferences, or we could be asked to develop some or to push for some registration like now, which is what we're doing right now. But I did find that any kind of little achievement were a lot more recognized. And also there was clear growth and development opportunities. I mean, every month I get a direct meeting with my supervisor to talk about my own development. That can be vertical within the medical affairs team, but it can also be horizontal in the different type of teams, which is why they're pushing for us to collaborate, to discuss, to have placement with the other department. Third one was my advice. What's my advice for the people who want to do the change like I did? Well, I think most of these points, again, have been emphasized again already today. I think it's important to develop your own network, to know the company that you want to approach, create the connection. This is mainly done, I believe, through conferences, and learn about the new trends. I mean, we are in 2025. Things are going very fast, so you need to keep up to date. LinkedIn has been mentioned. Important to increase your visibility and to connect with potential employers. In terms of the skills that you will need, I believe in change. I would say don't be afraid of the change and be adaptable. Be ready to just embrace it. Networking relationships is the key. Identify your mentors. If you don't have any, find them, trust them, follow their advice or not, you can do it. Find new mentors, I've done it. Strong communication skills. I mean, we talk about our CV from academia, but everyone has this passion, this hobby, some kind of volunteering. And I think this is what you need to push on your CV, because the whole question is what will dissociate you from the rest of the pile of CV that the recruiter is going to look at. For MSL, I've heard some people talking about MSL course that you pay for. I would say forget that. Most of the companies provide their internal MSL preparation and registration, so there's no point to pay for it. I will also, enhance your knowledge and your skill within the path that you choose to go for. So overall, I would say 3 main points. The first one is your personal motivations, which is what drives us and keeps us going. The second one would be that changing careers can be rough, tough, challenging, but it's also very exciting. Once you've made the choice to move, most of the time you'll find all the help that you need on the way. Networking for me is key because that is what opens new opportunities, and also that's where you will find the help that you will need on the way. Overall, I will say that it's all about choosing a path that makes you happy and also that will help you grow. Thank you.